Hey everyone. So this week was talking about how military children and military spouses are affected and what their life is like because of their either father or mother or husband or wife um, being in the military. So a lot happens overseas, a lot of traumatic events happen, bombing, suicide, tortures, um, murders happen, and dealing with that as a soldier, you bring it home to your family, and then they are then affected by that just as much as you are. Um, so, for example, if I was married and my husband came home from the military, um, and he came home with PTSD, which is one of the biggest issues right now that happens with a military spouse. If he was come home with PTSD, he could be a completely different person than when he left. He could be somebody that I don't really know anymore. Um, and looking at that Cafe Mom video, that one was actually really interesting. I enjoyed seeing those perspectives and how, what, what the spouses think, how they get through things. And one of the things was, um, they're constantly asked, well, if this person is being aggressive, why do you stay with them? Why do you stick it out when others decide to leave? And one of them had a really good point is that they've stuck it out because if their husband came home with a physical injury, they wouldn't just leave the person. They would be their support system and show that their home is a stable environment to help support them to get better. So PTSD is no different. It's just a mental illness instead of a physical one. And there is help for PTSD. It's not something that they're stuck with. Yes, sometimes it can stay with them for the rest of their lives, but at least through psychologists and medications, things like that, they're able to help these people live an ordinary life and stay in that relationship that they're in and stay a part of their children's lives. And so when she was asked, well, why do you stay with them? That was her reasoning, was that I'm here to help them heal. You don't just give up on somebody. And so I thought that one was interesting. I think we all do that in our normal lives anyways, even if we're not involved with someone in the militaries that, we're their support system. We don't join a relationship because it's going to be easy. We join them to go through life together, to support each other in the good times and the bad. So there was that. Another thing that was mentioned, there was a study between military spouses and civilian spouses, and they're looking at the difference in anxiety, depression, social support, and then the chances of divorce, ending a marriage. And depression, anxiety really didn't have a difference, which I thought was interesting. That um, I would think if you were a military spouse, you'd have more anxiety or depression because you're separated from your spouse for a longer period of time. But maybe it's different if you're around your spouse too much. Maybe it's the same. I kind of think that'd be interesting to learn more about too, why it's so similar. The things that were different were the social support, which is good to hear that military spouses have all those programs they can participate in, and people around them to help them through what they're going through, being separated from the ones they love. And then the other difference was divorces. That, let's see, it was 80% of military spouses had frequently considered divorce compared to 17% of civilian spouses. So that one is interesting. Maybe it's not that you're depressed, but you get out of the situation instead of sticking through it. Maybe that's why there's better mental health for spouses for anxiety and depression, is because they decide to just leave that situation completely. I wonder if it'd be different to look at those that stay and looking at their anxiety and depression specifically. I think that's something to look at. And then with children, military on children is hard, no doubt. Not to mention there's, like, I personally went to 5 different schools from elementary to high school, and I never moved. It was through school closures. And trying to find new friends at these schools and knowing new teachers and a new layout of a school when you're at that age is hard enough. But I still had friends around with me. I can't imagine military children having to move to different towns, different states, leaving friends, meeting completely new people, and exploring a different climate too. That's got to be hard. Some children in that reading we had even avoided trying to get to know people because they knew they would be leaving soon. Didn't want to make those connections to just say goodbye later on. And I think that's pretty harmful for children when they're growing up, not making connections with others, and kind of already being in that mindset that I'm not going to get close to someone because we're just going to leave anyways. What kind of mindset is that for somebody that is older who wants to get married? Like, what if they're going to leave me anyways? Why even get started? So, let's see. So some of the things I wanted to mention about the children was that their behavior can change. So there's all the usual changes that children go through, including there's always bullying that happens, worrying about their family, finances. I definitely worried when my parents said, well, we can't afford that this month. It would worry me. And then there's the worrying about how you look, worrying about dating, things like that. That's all usual. Well, all military children go through that. But on top of that, they worry about the safety of their parents overseas. They worry about their parent that is there at home and seeing how overwhelmed they are with having to do everything that normally two parents do, but now it's on one parent. And on top of being overwhelmed because of all the responsibilities they have as a single parent, that already is a toll on themselves, but adding on how they're worrying about their spouse and worrying, well, the kids do this at school, they're involved in bullying, do I pass that along to my husband and make him worry overseas where he can't do anything? All of that. And then I think nowadays social media has helped, though. We see everyone complaining that kids are on their phones too much, but I think it's a good thing for military children to keep the connections, friendships that they have from previous schools, from previous towns, and staying in touch, because children do move after they're 18. They don't necessarily stay in the same town that they grew up in. So keeping those connections is good, and it also helps the military spouses be better connected with other military spouses and have that social support as well. I think that's really important. And then also just I think for children, it's important to find the positive sides of moving so much too. Being able to see more of the country and getting to meet new people. And I think trying to show your children that it's a positive experience is the best way to go about it. Instead of saying, well, I'm sorry we have to move again, it's going to be hard and all of that. But just look at it positive, like, I wonder who you're going to meet at this new school, what kind of experiences you're going to have, and new chances that you'll have as well. And then one of the other things that is something that I don't like necessarily is how media is involved with reporting what's happening overseas. Where now children at a young age see the bombings that are happening, seeing how many people are dying overseas. And when they have a parent that is over there, how hard it must be for them to say, well, that happened to this person. What's the chances that's going to happen to my dad or my mom? It's more of a reality for them now, instead of just having it in a newspaper or something like that. Now it's on TV where children can access it. And then also having a parent who comes back with PTSD, which is one of the biggest factors for spouses, like I said. Having a child who sees their parent not being the same or being violent towards their spouse, being violent towards the parent that was home the entire time. That could be hard for a child, trying to understand how they can help, because children always want to try and help. So trying to figure out how they're supposed to help, how they're supposed to keep their parents together, I think is a big worry for them, and it shouldn't be that kind of a burden. That burden shouldn't be put on children, but it is for those military children. So from our readings and everything, I just think that social support is a key player, trying to have a positive outlook for the children who are having to move, who are having to live without a parent, trying to find good role models in the community that can not replace the parent that's overseas, but to kind of fill that gap of, if the dad's overseas, having a teenage boy or someone in their 20s kind of be that role model to help them have those questions that a boy might ask his dad, or a little girl might ask her dad, that kind of thing. So yeah, social support is huge, and then also just recognizing that PTSD is a problem. You can come back home with physical injuries, but coming home with a mental injury is just as important to heal, and to admit that something's going on, that you need to get some help, not just for you but for your family as well, I think is important in addressing all those situations. So I really enjoyed this project, this assignment, just because this is kind of what I wanted to do with this program. I want to be a counselor, a psychologist for families who have loved ones who are in active duty, and help them through that process and be there as social support, and show them everything that we can do to help. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to the next class that we all have.